Okay, so part 2. Okay. We're not going to finish it all today, don't worry. I have no desire to be here until midnight. Also, some of it obviously is not that important. You notice that some bits I go through quite slowly with you, and other bits we went through more quickly. Because I know the bits that generally will come up more often in your exam, and those bits that come up more often, I'm going to explain those bits in more detail. The bits that are less likely to come up, I can't say definitely for sure they will not come up, but I think the bits that are less likely to come up, well, we will go through a little bit more quickly. Okay. Section 7 is very important. So the next part we're going to look at, section 7. This bit is very important, and so we do need to go through this a little bit slowly. I just need to find the questions again. So, section 7 is about how to make a law. And it's going to explain the process where both houses need to agree. So, this will be more likely to come up in your exam. And you need to understand this bit quite carefully. So, we'll go through it slowly. Section 7. All bills for raising revenue, money, shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. So, any bill, a bill means a law, basically, okay? Before it becomes a law, it's a bill. A bill is what they're voting on, a suggestion. After they vote and it's agreed and the president signs it, then it's a law. When it's in Congress and they're still talking about it, it's called a bill. Any bill for raising revenue, for raising tax, must begin in the House of Representatives. Why? Because the House of Representatives are chosen by the people. So any bill for raising money must begin in the House of Representatives. All of the other laws, all the other bills, can begin either in the House of Representatives or in the Senate. And both houses will need to agree. Okay? They will both need to agree before it becomes a law, before it is sent to the president for him to sign. Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become a law, be presented to the President of the United States. So, House of Representatives will suggest a bill, or the Senate will suggest a bill. And then it will go to a committee, a small group of people that have responsibility for that area. There will be a health committee, an education committee, a defense committee. And they will talk through the bill very, very carefully to make sure that they agree on every sentence. And then the whole House will vote. If it starts in the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives like it, and they vote, and it passes, then it goes to the Senate. And in the Senate, it goes to committee again. And then when the committee is happy, the Senate will vote. Now, if the Senate made any changes, it must go back to the House of Representatives. And they must discuss it again. And this process goes back and forward until both the House of Representatives and the Senate have voted on and agreed on exactly the same bill. Okay? So it can start either place, but it will always go to the other house, and both houses can make changes. And it has to be exactly the same, that both the Representatives and the Senate have to vote on exactly the same bill. When they have both agreed, then it is sent to the president. And the president signs, and then it becomes a law. If the president approves, he shall sign it. But if not, he shall return it with his objections to the house in which it shall have originated. So, if the president does not like it, It's it's called a veto. That V-E-T-O, veto. If the president does not like it, he can veto it. He can refuse to sign it. And then it goes back to the House where it originated, where it began. So if it began in the House of Representatives, it goes back to the House of Representatives. If it began in the Senate, then it goes back to the Senate. And they shall enter the objections on their journal and reconsider it. So remember that journal we talked about, that book, that record of their decisions? The president's objections, the reason why he refused to sign it, is recorded in the journal, in the House, where it first began. And then they reconsider it. They vote on it again. They talk about it again. They vote on it again. If after such reconsideration, 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other House. So if 2/3, now before it was half plus 1. So right now in here we have 11 people. If 6 people said yes, then it passed. But now it needs 2/3. So now it's not 6 of you, it needs to be 8 of you. It needs to be 2/3 of you. If 2/3 agree, this is called a super majority. A simple majority is a half plus 1 person. A super majority is a 2/3 majority. If 2/3 of the House say this should be a law, then they will send it to the other House. They send the bill and they send the objections from the president, and the other House shall proceed to reconsider it. And if it is approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. So this is how the Congress, the legislature, can override the veto of the president. Congress has the power to make the law. The president has the power to reject the law that the legislature makes. The legislature have the power to ignore or override the veto of the president. But if you are going against the president's veto, it's not half, it has to be 2/3 of both houses. If 2/3 of both houses agree this should be a law, then it becomes a law. The president cannot veto it again. The president has one chance to veto, but if it is very, very popular in Congress and 2/3 of both houses agree, then it can still become a law. This comes back to that separation of power, the check and the balance. The president is limiting the power of Congress, but Congress is also limiting the power of the president. In all cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, yeses and nos. And the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered in the journal of each house respectively. It's not a secret vote. Those that say yes, those that say no, their names are written down, yes and no, so everybody can see who vote yes and who vote no. If any bill shall not be returned by the president within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall be presented to him, the same shall be a law. So the president has 10 days to decide if he wants to sign or not including Sunday. Okay? Now, sometimes the president will not sign the law, but also he will not veto the law. Sometimes the president hates this law. He does not want to make this law. But he knows the law is very popular in the legislature. So he knows if he vetoed the law, the legislature will vote again and override him. So sometimes the president might not want to lose face because he doesn't want to be overruled by the legislature. So sometimes it's like a protest. He refuses to sign the law. His name is not on the law, but also he doesn't send it back because he knows that they will ignore him. So after 10 days, if the president has done nothing, it's a law, even without him signing it. and it is treated the same way as if he'd signed it. It's no different. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the consequence of the Senate and House of Representatives may be necessary, except when the question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States. So, all the laws, all the votes, everything that the legislative vote on goes to the President for his agreement. So again, check and balance. Okay. Section 8 is a very long section. Question 19. All money, revenue bills must originate in the House of Representatives. Question 20. Before bills can be signed into law by the President. Before the President can sign the law, they must be agreed by both houses. Yeah. You'll notice, I think... question 21. Even if a bill is vetoed or sent back to Congress by the President, the bill can still become a law with a 2/3 vote for it in both the House and the Senate. Now, 22, true or false? Votes by members of Congress are secret and not recorded individually. True or false? False. The people saying yay and nay, their names are recorded in the journal. They are not secret votes. Section 8 is a very long section about the power of the legislature, what they can do. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imports, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imports, excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Congress has the power to take tax from the people, but it has to be the same in the whole of the country. So if you say 20% tax in New York, it must also be 20% tax in North Carolina. You cannot have higher taxes or lower taxes in different states. If the federal tax, it's the same for the whole country. So 24, Congress has the power to collect taxes, yes or no? Yes, 24 is true. To borrow money, Congress has the power to borrow money. To regulate, to control commerce, trading with foreign nations and among the states and the Indian tribes. Congress has the power to make law about trading. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. To establish uniform rule of naturalization. Naturalization means who can become a citizen. So Congress decides who can become a citizen of the United States. And bankruptcies, who is bankrupt, who has no money left, who has to pay their debt. To coin money, to print money. Coin money always means to print money, to make money. To regulate the value of money. Okay, so Congress is there about making money. And punishment for counterfeiting money. So counterfeit means to make fake money. Okay, so sometimes criminal, they want to make fake money. Punishing people that make fake money is the power of Congress. To make post offices and post roads. Post office, you know, yeah? Where you send a letter. Post roads, that is what they call the highway between the states. How to travel between the highways. So for post offices and highways that go between different states, this is the power of Congress. Local roads, roads inside a state that do not go outside the state, that is not Congress, that is the state legislature. They have the power. But Congress has the power for roads that go between different states. To promote science and arts, okay, and to give authors and inventors the exclusive right. This is called a patent. So if you have an idea You register your idea, and then nobody else can copy your idea. It's called patent. To make tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. Article 3 of the Constitution makes the Supreme Court the highest court in the country. But Article 3 of the Constitution does not make any court lower than that. So lower courts are made by legislature. The Constitution only makes one big high court. To define the punishers, piracies, felonies committed on the high seas. So on the sea, that's not part of any state. So that's the federal government that punishes crimes that happen at sea. So if you steal from another ship, you'll be punished by the federal government, not the local government. To declare war. Okay. To raise and support armies. So declaring war and raising an army is the power of Congress. So 23, the answer is true. How about 26? To regulate trade with other countries. True, we already talked about that commerce, yeah? To have a navy, to support armies, to make rules for the government, okay? This is all about legislature. To have a militia is like a small army, not like a BGF. BGF is a militia. It's not the Tatmadaw, it's not the national army, it's a local army. This is the power of Congress to raise up a militia. To provide for organizing, arming, disciplining the militia. Okay, don't worry about that. Let's go over the page. Now, the next little paragraph says, to exercise exclusive legislation over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may be cession of particular states and become the seat of government of the United States. This means the Constitution gave the government the power to take a piece of land, 10 miles by 10 miles. What would be that for? It's for the capital city. Okay? So Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the capital of America. It is not part of any state. It is independent. It's an independent area that is not part of any state. This little paragraph here gave the government the power to take area away from any place it liked to make a 10 square mile area where they could have the government of the United States. You might think, why? Well, they thought that if the capital city was in any state, that state might become proud of themselves. They might say that they are the most important state in America because they have the capital city in their state. And so, this little bit of the Constitution said we will take 10 square mile from somewhere in the country and we will make this the capital city. So Washington, D.C. is not part of any state. And one of the later amendments to the Constitution gives Washington, D.C. the right to send representatives to the House of Representatives. Because at this point, every state sends representatives and senators to Congress. Washington, D.C. could not send any representatives or senators to Congress. So the people that lived in Washington, D.C. had no representative, nobody to represent them in government. And so one of the later amendments to the Constitution gave the citizens in Washington, D.C. the right to vote for a representative to represent them in government. Okay. We'll skip section 9. It's not very important. We'll go to section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty or alliance or confederation. So they cannot, the states, so North Carolina and Georgia, they cannot make a treaty with any other country. Treaty has to be made by Congress. Okay? Cannot be made by the states. They cannot make any money. They cannot make their own tax unless they have the power from Congress. No state was allowed to have troops. Okay? And that still goes today. In America, the states are not allowed to have soldiers in the street. The soldier, if they leave their army base, must take off their uniform and not take their weapon. The soldiers cannot be used inside America. The soldiers are for sending to other countries. Okay? Every state has what's called a National Guard, like a BGF if you like. And the National Guard is a militia. So the state can have their own militia, their own National Guard, but the federal army cannot be used inside the country. Okay? So it's not like Thailand or Myanmar where you see the soldiers in the streets and the checkpoints. It's not allowed in America because they thought some state might start fighting against each other. As we starting to look at the Civil War, that's exactly what happened. The one that we missed was select the Supreme Court judges. 25, the answer is false. Okay. The president chooses the judges. Congress has to agree. They have to ratify. But they cannot choose by themselves. Okay, let's go to Article 2 of the Constitution. And when we finish Article 2, we will stop for today. Otherwise my voice will die. The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States. Who has the power of the executive branch? The President. The President, the Vice President, and his Cabinet Secretaries. He shall hold the office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President, chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. So, how many years does he serve? 4 years. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the number and representatives. How many senators in each state? What is the minimum number of representatives? 1. The minimum number of representatives is 1. If the population is very small, they have 1 representative and 2 senators. So every state will have at least 3 electors, because 2 senators and 1 representative. If they have more representatives, then they will have more electors. So California right now, 52 electors, because they have 50 representatives and 2 senators. So together it makes 52. Yeah? Maybe not exactly 52, maybe 53, 54, I can't remember exactly, but you get the idea. You add the number of representatives and the number of senators together, and that's how many electors you have. Remember what we were looking at in the other lesson? Those compromises. How is the president chosen? Some people thought the people should vote for the president directly. Other people said the people might be fooled. They might choose somebody that is not a good president. They might not have the education to choose the suitable person. So, it's an indirect election. The people in the state vote for the electors. The electors then vote for the president. Yes? And that's what that long section there is saying. That long section in italics, that third paragraph in section 1, is explaining that the state will have a number of electors chosen by the political parties. The number of electors will be equal to the number of representatives plus the number of senators, so not less than 3. The people will then vote for the electors. If they vote for Democrat, then it's the Democrat electors that will choose the president. If they vote Republican, then it will be the Republican electors that will choose the president. Yeah? The electors, the Electoral College, then meet together after the people vote. The electors will meet together and they will say who they want to be the president. So they'll have 2 choices normally. Mattia? Bit of a stupid system, a bit of a complicated system, but it's a 2-step process. Democrats choose their electors, Republicans choose their electors. The people vote Democrat or Republican. If the Republican win, then it's the Republican electors. If the Democrats win, then it's the Democrat electors. And then they will meet together and they will choose who they want to be the president. So if the Democrats win, they choose the Democrat candidate. If the Republicans win, they choose the Republican candidate. That's the basic idea of the Electoral College. So the people are not voting directly for the president, they are voting for electors, and the electors are then voting for the president. Let's go over. The Congress decide the time of choosing the electors. Okay. Looking at the 5th paragraph now. No persons except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of President. This is question 3 from your homework. If Onjombo goes to America and he becomes a citizen, and then he lives in America for 20 years as a citizen, can he become the president, yes or no? No. Because it says a natural-born citizen. A natural-born citizen means a citizen that was born in America. Okay? Not somebody who becomes the citizen later. So remember, for the representatives, if you had been a citizen for 7 years, you can become a representative. If you've been a citizen for 9 years, you can become a senator. But for the president, either when the Constitution was made, you were a citizen, or you are a natural-born citizen, which means you were born in America. That little bit about being a citizen at the adoption of the Constitution, just because some people, when the Constitution was made, might have come from other countries, but they were citizens at that time. Today, 200 years later, we don't need to worry about at the adoption of this Constitution. We're focused on natural-born citizen. Okay? That's the second gap in question 3. A natural-born citizen. Only. Do you remember Arnie? Arnold Schwarzenegger? I'll Be Back? Terminator? No! Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator. The film star. No? Come here. Him.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay. You know him, yes?
Yes.
Who is he?
I know. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator. I'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Kids.
Terminator, yeah. Robot.
Robot. Chino. He was a famous TV star, yes? What position in government did he get? No, position in government, not position in movie. President of America? No. No. He was the governor of California. Yeah. You know, every state, they have their governor, yes? Like the president, but only for the state. So the governor of the state. He became the governor of California. People in America, they choose crazy people. You know, they chose Donald Trump to be the president of America. They chose the Terminator to be the governor of California. They just like TV star. They're crazy. He can never be the president of America because he was born in Austria. Okay, in Europe. He was born in Austria in Europe. He was the 38th governor of California from 2003 to 2011. He had 8 years, 2 terms. Okay? But he can never become the president of America because he's not a natural born citizen. He was born in another country. Matthew? Okay. Let's continue. And neither shall any person be allowed to the office, who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years. How old do you need to be? 35. How old for a representative? 25. How old for the senator? 30. How old for the president? Okay, you see, higher position, older age, more strict on the requirement. And being 14 years a resident within the United States. So how many years do you need to live in the US? 14. Because you could be born in America and then move to another country. When you come back to America, you cannot be president straight away. You must live in America for 14 years first. Okay? So, a little bit different to the senator and representative. And the senator and representative said you had to live in the state that you will represent. For the president, you must have been living in America for 14 years before you can be chosen to be the president. That was question 3. The next bit has changed, that's why it's in italics. In case of the removal of the president from office, impeachment, or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of his office. So if he's sick, maybe in hospital, or maybe his mind is starting to deteriorate, so he's got mental problem. Okay. The same shall devolve on the Vice President, and the Congress may, by law, provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability both of the President and Vice President, declaring what officers shall then act as President, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed by President. Okay. What this says is, if the President cannot be President anymore, if he dies, resigns, gets sick, the Vice President shall become next. If the Vice President is also gone, then the legislature can choose who is the next president. Because the election cannot move. The election is every 4 years. So you cannot have an extra election to choose the president. So if the president dies, gets sick, gets ill, cannot do his job, or he's impeached, or he is removed, and the vice president is also gone, then the legislature shall choose who becomes the next president. This is in italics, because later they said this is not a great idea. maybe we should make very clear rule about who is next. And they changed the order a few times. They went, at one point they said president and then vice president and then the president pro tempore of the Senate. Another time they said president and then vice president and then the Secretary of State, one of the cabinet. They changed many times. Today, the order is the president and then the vice president. Number 3 is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Number 4 is the President pro tempore of the Senate. And then the cabinet are ordered in rank. It's not here, but you will never get the president, the vice president, the speaker, the president pro tempore, and all of the cabinet, you will never get them meeting together. Even at the State of the Union address, where the president comes to Congress to tell the country the update one time per year, at least one member of the cabinet is not allowed to be there. They are taken to an army base. Do you know why? Because they worry about terrorist attack. So if they had the president, the vice president, the speaker, the president pro tempore, and all of the cabinet all gathered together in the same room, and a terrorist let off a bomb, then everybody would be dead. There would be no leader left. So they have something called designated survivor. Every time that there's a big meeting of everybody, at least one person must be taken away to an army base and put in a secure place where they cannot be attacked. Maybe in a concrete bunker or something like that. So even if a nuclear bomb go off in Washington, D.C., there will be at least one survivor from leadership who is somewhere else in the country. And if all of the others were killed, then that person would automatically become the next president. So over the years, after they wrote the Constitution, they realized that the threat got bigger and bigger. You know, in the beginning, it was just like this little gun, and you shoot one bullet every 30 seconds. Difficult to kill everybody at the same time. But then you start to get bombs. You start to get nuclear bombs. You got chemical weapons. And so now they will never let everybody meet together at the same time. There has to be a designated survivor. And the leadership is very clear. This person and this person, this person, this person. There's like a list of 30 people in order, from most senior to most junior, who will take over if each person died. That's why that bit's in italic, because they made a new law to explain clearly the order of succession. The president shall at stated times receive for his services a compensation. Does he get paid? Yes or no? Yes, he gets a compensation. The president is paid for his service. True. Question 4. Which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected. So after his election, he is not allowed to increase it, and he is not allowed to reduce it. That means they cannot become corrupt. They cannot become the president and then vote or make a law to increase their salary. They can make a law to increase the salary of the next president, but it will only happen after the next election. So when you become president, your salary is the same every year for 4 years. It doesn't go up, it doesn't go down. This is a way of protecting the country from abuse, from corruption. And he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. Emolument means reward, money. So he is not allowed to take any other reward. He's not allowed to get paid for anything else. He's not allowed to increase his salary. If you watch the news, there's a big argument about Donald Trump. Some of Donald Trump's hotels are in government buildings. So he rents the hotel from the government building, from the government, and maybe some of that money is coming back to him. Or maybe he's making profit by using the government building. So there's an argument in America right now, does President Trump break the emolument clause or not? And when other leaders come to America and they stay in his hotel, and they pay him to stay in his hotel, is he getting an emolument? Is he getting a financial reward by being the president? Many world leaders stay in his hotel when they come to visit him, and it's not for free. Or when he travels around the country and he takes his Secret Service with him to protect him. The Secret Service, if he stays in his hotel in Florida, the Secret Service have to pay for staying in his hotel. So is he getting a benefit by taking a lot of Secret Service with him, and by making them pay to his hotel? Is he getting a benefit? So there's a lot of debate whether Donald Trump is breaking this clause of the Constitution or not. Before he enter the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. Promise. So you might see when a new president comes, they will stand in front of the White House or in front of Congress. They will place their hand on the Bible. They will place one hand in the air, and they will repeat what the judge tells them. And it says, I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. He promises he will do what the Constitution says. He will protect, he will uphold, he will follow the Constitution. He will not break the law. So if he breaks the Constitution, the legislature will begin impeachment because he has broken his promise that he made to America. Now, Section 2 is all about the power of the president. Section 1 was about choosing the president. Section 2 is about the power of the president. The president shall be commander-in-chief of the army and navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into actual service of the states. He is the leader of the armed forces. He is a commander-in-chief. If you think about Myanmar system, he is the senior general. Okay? So he is the highest position in the army. Congress has the power to declare war against other country. The president cannot declare war against another country. But the president is the one that can move the army. Congress cannot move the army. That's the president's job. So it's the balance of power. Congress have the power to declare war. The president has the power to move the army. And we might see this later this week or beginning of next week. Sometimes the president was a little bit sneaky. Sometimes he wants to fight a war. And Congress has not voted to declare war. So what did he do? He sent the soldiers into another country. The soldiers go to another country, what do they start doing? Start fighting. So then Congress has no choice. They have to declare war because the president already sent the soldier. The idea of the Constitution was that the legislature and the executive would work together. One would declare the war, one would send the soldiers. But sometimes legislature did not want to fight a war, and the president did want to fight a war, and so the president would try to force the legislature to fight a war by sending the soldiers first. And then later the legislature have to declare war because they're already fighting. So one of the power of the president is commander-in-chief. Looking at question 5. How many do you see? How many parts of the armed forces do you see? You see the army and what's missing? Air Force. Why? Because when the Constitution was made, there was no Air Force. Okay. During the First World War, the Air Force were part of the Navy. They were under the control of the Admiral. It was only later that the Air Force became a separate part of the armed forces. Today, we have five parts. We have the Army, the Navy, the Marines. Marines are soldiers that go on the ships. So Army is the one that fight on the land. Navy are the sailors. But sometimes on the ship you might take 200 soldiers. So when two ships come together, you have the soldier and the soldier fighting each other. These would be called the Marines. So the Marines were very specialized. They're very high in their ability because they can fight on the ship and they can also fight on the land. If you want to invade a country, you send your ships. And you might have some soldier on the ships that will go into the land to take the fort. These are the Marines. So you have the Army, the Navy, the Marine, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard. Coast Guard are the people that protect the border of America. So they have very small, very quick ships, and they go up and down the border. Especially today, it's especially about stopping illegal immigration, people coming into the country illegally, stopping drugs coming into the country, things like that. And Donald Trump, he made a 6th one. What's the 6th one? Did you read the news last year? Space Force. Donald Trump wants to go start fighting wars up there. So, yeah, Donald Trump you can go read the news, he made a 6th branch of the armed forces, the space. If you go and look at the badge, it looks like Star Wars, or Star Trek. It's very similar to Star Trek. Crazy guy. Well, I think they want to, they fought so much on Earth, now maybe go to the moon and start fighting China against America on the moon. Or who can get to Mars first and then start fighting there, Or putting satellites going around the Earth and bombs in the satellites that can come down, things like that. So they start a space force now. But at the time of the Constitution, there were 2. Army and Navy. And later they expand step by step. It says he may require in the opinion in writing the principal officer in each of the executive departments. Executive departments mean Department for Health, Department for Education, Department for Treasury, Foreign Affairs. And the principal officer means the Cabinet Secretary. So the Cabinet Secretary for Education, the Cabinet Secretary for Health, these make his cabinet. And together they make decisions about what to do in the country. He shall have the power by and with the advice and the consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators concur. Who makes the treaty? The president makes the treaty with other country, but the Senate have to agree this treaty. So the president will make the treaty first, but it is not legal until the Senate also vote and agree. We'll look at this in about 2 weeks' time, but remember it for the future. Woodrow Wilson was the president during World War I. Woodrow Wilson signed the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles made an organization called the League of Nations, like the United Nations, but before the United Nations, it was the League of Nations. America never joined. Even though the League of Nations was President Wilson's idea, and even though President Wilson signed the Treaty of Versailles, America never joined the League of Nations because the Senate refused to agree, to ratify. So again, this sometimes comes up in the exam as an example of separation of power. The president makes the treaty, but the Senate have to agree the treaty. He shall nominate and by and with the advice and the consent of the Senators shall appoint ambassadors and other public ministers, consuls, judges of the Supreme Court and other officers of the United States. The President will choose the judges. The Senate have to agree. They have to ratify. Again, separation of power. The President chooses the ambassador, the representative to go to the other country. Again, the Senate have to ratify. The President will choose the cabinet, the leaders for the executive departments. The Senate have to ratify. This is important because it is an example of the separation of powers, and it's an example of how the Founding Fathers didn't want the President or the legislature to become too powerful. So they divided the power. President can choose, Senate must agree. It does come up in the exams. So if you get this section of the Constitution in your exam, you're probably looking at the separation of powers, the balance of powers, the checks and balances. Okay, so what can the president do? He's the commander-in-chief. The president can give pardons and reprieves. Pardon and reprieve, sorry, I missed that. Just at the bottom of page 30. A pardon means forgiveness. So you are, I don't know, Mosquito, he uses Yotoyama, he goes to prison. The president can give him a pardon, release him from prison. You see that in Myanmar every year. Normally in Thinjan every year, there's a pardon. The president releases prisoners. Yeah? Same idea in America. The president has the power to pardon, reprieve somebody. So only after they are found guilty. After they are found guilty, the president can release them from prison. But not for impeachment. So the president is the commander-in-chief. The president has the power of reprieves and pardons. The president has the power to make treaties. He has the power to appoint ambassadors. He has the power to choose the judges. Okay? There are 5 of the main powers of the president. Question 5. Section 3. He shall from time to time give to Congress information of the state of the Union. 1 time per year, he must go to Congress. And both houses of Congress will gather together. Now anyway. In the past, sometimes he did by writing, but now he always does it in person. He goes and gives a speech. And over time, in the beginning, he wrote it down and sent the letter. Later, he would go and give the speech. Later, they record the speech and put it on the radio. Then later, in the 1960s, they put it on TV. And now they put it on internet, on YouTube. Okay. So over time, this has changed a little bit. As technology improved, this is something that's changed over time. But the main point is that he must give information to Congress about the state of the country, what his plans are for the next year, what has happened in the last year, what his plans are for the next year. He must share that information to the Congress. Recommend for their consideration such measures that he should judge necessary and expedient. Recommend means tell them what he wants to do. Give them suggestions, and then they make the law. And the law goes back to him for signing. And this happens when you convene, when you gather together both houses. And if the two houses cannot agree on the right time, he may adjourn them. He may send them away until the time that he thinks is best. He has the power over the timing. He also receives the ambassadors. So the representatives that come from the other countries, he also receives them. He has that formal meeting with them. Normally in the White House, you see them shaking hands on TV and have the meeting. And during the State of the Union, he will share to the whole Congress the meetings and discussions that he's had with other world leaders. So, Section 3 basically says, every year he must share to Congress what happened over the past year and his plans for the next year. So the purpose of the State of the Union is to share information to Congress on what is happening in the country. Question 6. To share to Congress information about what is happening in the country. Section 4. The President, the Vice President, and all civil officers, so any cabinet secretary, any ambassador, any judge, any general, any officer of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment. Impeachment is that process of removing. Now, listen very carefully to this. Impeachment and conviction. So impeachment is the representatives. Conviction is the Senate. Treason. Treason means betraying your country, working for the other country, giving secret information to another country, working against your country. Treason. Bribery. Taking money to do something. Or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Oh, this is probably the worst part of the Constitution. High crime. Why not crime? Why high crime? So that means the crime has to be a serious crime. Yes? Not, I don't know, not forgetting to wear your seatbelt. That's not a high crime, that's a small crime. Yeah? What's a misdemeanor? A mistake? I think Mosquito's got the perfect answer. A bad thing. Misdemeanor is a bad thing. So, treason, very clear. Working against your country. Bribery, very clear. Taking money for doing something. High crime, well, not so clear. What is the difference between a low crime and a high crime? Who decides if a crime is a high crime or a low crime? Okay, this is why there's a lot of argument over impeachment, deciding if something is a high crime or not. And misdemeanor, well, misdemeanor literally means a bad thing, which can be anything. This is the most unclear part of the Constitution. In some ways, the Founding Fathers wanted to make it open so that the power of impeachment, the power to remove the president, the vice president, or other officer, is with Congress. They wanted it open enough that Congress could remove anybody that they like. But every time there has been impeachment, there has been an argument about, is this a high crime or misdemeanor or not? Is this serious enough to remove the president, or is this not serious? And that is what the impeachment trials always come down to. Is it serious enough to remove them or not? And the Constitution does not give any advice about what is serious and what is not serious. And so there is always a lot of argument in the Senate between those that are the same party as the president and those that are on the opposite party. Trump was impeached this year. Who was in control of the Senate? The Republicans, the same party. Was he removed? No. In the 1990s, Bill Clinton was impeached. Bill Clinton had sex with his secretary, and then he lied about it under oath. So he had his hand on the Bible, he promised to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and he lied about it. And so they were arguing in the Senate, is lying under oath a high crime and misdemeanor or not? Do you know who was in control of the Senate? The Democrats. Who was the president? The Democrat. Was he removed from office? No. And the only other president that was impeached was Andrew Johnson. I think it was 1867, I think. I have to check the date, but I think it's 1867. And that was after the Civil War, when they were rebuilding the country. And Abraham Lincoln had been assassinated, he'd been killed. And so his vice president, Andrew Johnson, had become the president. And he was from a different part of the country. He was a southerner. And most of the Senate were northerners. And they didn't trust him because he was from part of the country that had been fighting for independence. And so they put him on trial for impeachment. Also, they failed. So in the whole history of America, only 3 presidents have been impeached: Johnson, Clinton, and Trump. None of them were convicted. None of them were removed from office. Partly because this section of the Constitution is very unclear. And partly because the Senate is often controlled by the same party that the president comes from. And when your friends are voting, they don't vote to remove you. So, the only other president that came close to being impeached was Nixon. Nixon was the guy that sent one of his people to go and bug, to put a listening device in the office of the opposition. And he was about to be impeached, but he resigned before he was impeached because he was going to lose. So he resigned. And after he resigned, they couldn't do anything about it. He'd already gone. Because remember, impeachment can only remove you from office. So after he resigned, there was nothing that could be done. And the next president, his vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, gave him a pardon. Pardon means forgiveness. So the vice president came in, the vice president became a president, and straight away he pardoned Nixon for all that he'd done. And so he couldn't even be arrested because he had a presidential pardon. We'll look at that later, but that's just a little bit of information about impeachment, and it comes down to Section 4, Article 2 of the Constitution. Okay? Key points: Article 1, Legislature; Article 2, President. Let's stop.